With the changes coming to Widow in Season 5, a lot of people are asking the question, is Widow actually dead in the water, or is she actually viable and not really dead? And if she is or isn't, what does that mean for the future of Overwatch? Now, a creator called PMA Jellies on Twitter released a workshop mode showcasing the changes to Widowmaker visually, so we can actually see how they're going to affect her. And more specifically, the second workshop code he put compares the old one-shot range for 200 HP heroes, which was 84.28 meters, to the new one-shot range, which is 53.33 meters. And this is really freaking close. We look on Ilios Ruins and you can see right away that if you're at the edge on top where Widows normally grapple up, you're not even able to shoot players hiding behind their side's pillars that is circling the point, which is crazy. Not only can they use that as normal cover, but they are not threatened by you in a one-tap sense. And now, while this and many of the other screenshots are definitely more extreme examples, you gotta understand that the best maps for Widowmaker, the maps where she had the highest pick rate and where she was the most dominant, this is where you're gonna feel this the most. And in a lot of ways, that lack of consistency is really gonna hurt Widowmaker and just a flat out decrease to her power level on many of her best maps. Now, I do think that doesn't necessarily completely shut her down on these long distance maps. She still gets quite a bit of value, but there are other characters that I think become really hard to deal with in the straight head-to-head matchup. All the divers get to set up a lot easier and potentially jump her, and this is gonna make a huge dramatic change on many of the long-range sniper maps where it's typically like a Sigma and a Widowmaker. I do imagine that that's a lot easier to shut down and counter. A good Widowmaker isn't going to be able to get as much value during the setup phase. And then in addition to that, Hanzo can still one shot from range 200 HP heroes, so most of the time, why wouldn't you just pick him? And he's going to be better in the head-to-head matchup. In addition to that, the characters that are probably going to be fighting Widowmaker for her spot the most is characters like Ashe and specifically Sojourn. Sojourn could already one-shot headshot Widowmaker with her railgun without damage boost, and now Widowmaker can't return the favor from these really far distances. So all in all, Widowmaker is going to be hurt quite a bit on the long distance maps, and there are other more competitive options for you to choose if you're going to try to play a long distance character with different types of utility. And I don't think that Widowmaker is completely dead in the water, but taking a character that is super reliant on these one taps and making it so that some percentage of the time they're just not going to be kills is a really big deal. And I think it fundamentally hurts Widowmaker to the point where only a very small amount of people are even going to play her at all. Now, I do imagine that maybe down the line, they are going to work to change Widowmaker's identity, keep her a sniper, but give her some extra utility in some other ways. I'm not entirely sure the direction they're going to move her, but I do know that in her current state, after seeing the changes visualized, it's a really big deal, and it's definitely going to hurt Widow a lot. I don't even imagine that she's going to be the primary pick for a lot of these sniper maps even, and I just don't really see a place for her to see play relative to a lot of other characters' power level, whether you're playing her up against dive, whether you're playing her in poke. I do feel like there's just other better options unless you're an absolute crackhead on the Widowmaker. That being said, I think this is really interesting from a balance standpoint because we're seeing Blizzard finally making a pretty hard stance up against snipers. And even though Hanzo can still one-shot 200 HP heroes and not 250 HP heroes, I don't really imagine that that will stay for a long period of time. I honestly predict that the future of these characters is removing their one-shots entirely, or only allowing them to one-shot under set conditions, like being very close, and then giving them some sort of compromise with utility, or changing their fundamental identity. Because right now, Hanzo is almost as strong as he was before. I mean, he can't one-shot 250 HP heroes, but a lot of people don't really play those anyways, and while Mei is still really good, she's always really good, she doesn't really have a crazy high pick rate, nor would I consider her like a counter to Hanzo, even though before he was like a counter to Mei. Now they're just kind of two characters that just exist, and he can't one-shot her, but you know, that's not really the biggest deal to make it so he just gets shut down over and over again. And I do imagine that they'll probably take steeper action eventually against him. We saw what they did to Sojourn originally. We saw how they have changed like Ashe's damage boost headshot going into Overwatch 2. We saw them remove Roadhog's one-shot consistency. Now they're targeting Widowmaker. They're gonna be targeting Hanzo. It's basically just showing that they don't want one-shots. Like, one-shots are problem. They don't want it in Overwatch 2, and it seems like that's the direction they're moving towards. And I don't really blame them. I do understand that a lot of you that really like these characters are going to be a little bit mad, and I would be too if your character's identity changes, right? This character has been the same way for a very long time. But you also have to understand that when we go to a 5v5, the ability to delete someone, like, just for existing in positions, not necessarily even bad positions, just like running through from one cover to the next, a lot of the time, a person is forgiven for doing that because Widowmakers aren't good enough, right? They're not good enough to punish you. But as a Widowmaker improves, they can punish you for just pushing through and existing in opening space. And you could say, they should take cover, they should do this. You can't always play in a perfect set of cover. You can't always play in like a really safe position. You have to move, you have to press, you have to peek, you have to fight, you have to do these things. And as a Widowmaker player or just a one-shot character gets better and better, you get punished. Because really, if you're going to defend Widowmaker and one-shots as a whole, then you should also be defending Roadhog. You could say, it's a hook, it's a close-range hook. Oh, you should just play better positions. So everyone was kind of universally against Roadhog's change, his one-shot change. But tell me how the same arguments for having a Widowmaker one-shot in the game and have one-shots remain could not also apply to Roadhog. I mean, you can dodge hooks, you can deny it with natural cover, you can play cover. It doesn't mean it's healthy for the game, especially when we're moving to a 5v5, and it just seems like this is the new style that Blizzard is going for. This doesn't mean that we're returning to goats, this doesn't mean we're returning to double shield or anything like that. We're still going to have a skill-intensive game with skill-intensive heroes, characters like Cass, Ashe, Sojourn, characters like Tracer, Zen, Ana, Kiriko. I mean, the list goes on. We're not running away from skill. Like, this is not what this is. We're not being afraid of skill. That's not what we're doing either. A lot of this is just realizing that the only reason that Widowmaker could exist in the way that she did back in Overwatch 1 is for two main reasons. One, the vast majority of the population was not affected because Widowmakers were not good enough to be reliable. They just weren't. They weren't consistent enough to be reliable on the character, and that means it only really affected the top 1% of players, which old Blizzard balance team didn't give a single fuck about. I think most people can agree to that. They didn't really care at all, just like they didn't really care about console players, and like they've done a lot of things where they're kind of selective on who they actually care and listen to. And two, when you have 6 players and 2 of them are tanks, the impact of a Widowmaker is felt a lot less. So just naturally, even if the character didn't really make a lot of sense into the environment of the game, it was just kind of given a pass. But that's not the way that things are going, at least what I imagine based on these changes. So if you are a hard Widowmaker grinder, I would just keep in mind that this character is going to be a lot weaker and going to feel kind of like how Hog feels after his change to his consistency. Pretty bad, and she's going to be pretty weak, but I do imagine that she will get changes to compensate for this at some point in the form of utility not in her one shot. So something else is going to be increased in power level, whether that means a much shorter hook time, whether that means something completely different, I don't know, but I don't imagine that they will revert back to give her more one-shot power after doing this. And I also imagine that we will see no one-shots in the future, and we will see a reduction of one-shots going forward, Hanzo being the next one on the chopping block. And yeah, so you Hanzo mains, keep an eye out for that as well. But anyways, I really want to hear your opinion about all this in the comments down below. Are you happy, sad, frustrated? Do you agree with my take or disagree with it? Let me know, and smash that subscribe, because I am almost to 60,000 subscribers. But thank you so much for coming by, and I'll see you next time.